A lot of people saw this as a shock. Carolina's not fucking around. They're going for it. And we, of course, lost. They're coming up on do or die territory.
And we're going to talk about something that happened in hockey.
Yep.
A big blockbuster trade happened in hockey. Miko Rantanen was sent in pretty much it was a 3-team trade. Technically, to Dean's arch rival, the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yep.
Dean, I want your opinion on this trade. Was it a good trade?
Yeah, I think it was a phenomenal trade for both sides. For people who don't know hockey too much, Miko Rantanen was an assistant captain on the Colorado Avalanche, won a Stanley Cup with them as well. He's been loved by Colorado Avalanche fan, and a lot of people saw this as a shock. To be honest, there was no real rumblings about it. And also to be fair, the trade deadline in hockey isn't until March, so this was definitely a big hit to the hockey world, where a lot of those massive trades usually happen around the deadline. I will say I'm not shocked by it. Carolina has been known to do this, and they did this last year as well, where they did an absolute blockbuster trade at the deadline to get Jake Gensel from the Pittsburgh Penguins. So they're used to this, and they felt they needed to go make a move. I will say I don't think this was the worst move for Colorado either. They got a lot of depth in return, and they got a lot of good pieces to go, not only go on the first and second line to replace Rantanen, but the third line as well, right? And then you mentioned it, 3 teams, right? The only reason the third team was in this was to retain salary cap, which who gives a shit? So I thought this was a really good trade for both teams. Unfortunately, as a Ranger fan, the Rangers had to play Colorado and Carolina back-to-back games right after the trade, so we had to play them with their new players, and we, of course, lost both games. In terms of what this will do to the NHL, I think this is going to send a lot of shockwaves for one reason, specifically the Metropolitan Conference, where Carolina resides. I mean, this was over a month out from the trade deadline, right? Carolina's not fucking around. They're going for it. So a lot of teams that are on the brink or who think they can compete are going to have to decide, and quickly, are we going to be buyers at the deadline? Can we compete with a team like Carolina? Can we compete with a team like the Panthers? Or, do we save it for another year, make some strategic trades, and try to build for the next couple of years? It's a tough situation. One thing I will say with Carolina is, same exact thing with last year with Gensel, Miko Rantanen is a free agent after this year. And the trade did not involve any sort of extension.
Yeah.
So this, once again, could be another rental for Carolina, and they gave up a lot in order to get this rental. And Carolina consistently comes up short when it comes to the Eastern Conference playoffs. So we're going to see they're coming up on do or die territory, because if they continue to come up short, not even in the conference finals, but in the quarterfinals, you're going to have start having conversations on maybe that the philosophy or maybe the coaching isn't good. So it's going to be very curious to see how they go. They have gotten off to a good start already with Rantanen in their lineup. Colorado's already gotten off to a good start with Nietzsche and some of the other players that they got in their lineup. So
Jack Jury.
And Jury and Nietzsche. So it's going to be curious to see. I mean, we're going to speak about it more in depth as the season goes on, because if people don't know, there is no All-Star break in the NHL this year. It's being replaced by a 4 nations tournament.
I did not know this.
USA, Finland, Sweden, and Canada. Fire will be with NHL players will be going off in a tournament in replace of the NHL All-Star game. So it's going to be sick to watch the best players in the world battling it out for their country. And I believe there's only 5 or 6 games left for every single team until that happens.
There's one thing I will say is I do feel like, obviously, Russian teams have been taken out. It does suck because the Russian hockey team would be fucking filthy.
It is. So they're for people, I'm sure people know because it's a global thing now. Russia has been banned from not only just hockey, international sports, but the Olympics as well. Not banned, but you're not suspended, right?
Indefinitely.
Until other global actions are done, aka the war in Ukraine, until they stop their humanitarian crises, all that shit, right? So, um, they have begun talks to try and get Russia or them back into the Olympics come the next Winter Olympics, or at least come the next Four Nations tournament. It's going to be curious to see how those negotiations go because it's true. Some of the best NHL players in the game right now are Russian. Artemi Panarin. There's great goalies, Igor Shesterkin, Andrei Valevsky, Vasilevsky, my apologies. Not to mention some of the older guys like Alex Ovechkin. So it's going to be interesting to see how the years go on with those negotiations. I do expect that Russia to eventually return to the NHL fold and to return to the world fold when it comes to as well on the Olympic side of things. So we'll see how things go, but we're definitely going to be talking about hockey more. It's going to be awesome to see the nations face off and the greatest players in the NHL face off for their nation. So we'll talk about that as well. But yeah, huge trade over a month prior to the deadline, which is even crazier.
The one thing I will say, because you spoke about Carolina's aspect for Colorado, obviously they played two. I believe they played two games, one against the Rangers and then one against the Islanders. Last night they lost to the Islanders. They got not blown out, but they lost by like 3 goals. I think it was 5-2, I believe.
Yes.
So one thing I will say though is like from what I've seen in hockey with Colorado to be exact, they do like when the year they won the Stanley Cup, they made a lot of moves to get that team.
Colorado is one of those unique teams where their philosophy is straight up score.
Exactly. Yeah, no
Uh,
goalie score.
no goalie, not a lot of defense. We're just gonna straight up outscore you every night.
Exactly.
And it worked for them in the Stanley Cup year because their offense was just short of unstoppable. And there have been teams who tried to replicate that. One in particular is the Oilers, but have not succeeded. So if anybody knows how to do this sort of philosophy where you just fuck you, I'm gonna score six against you every night, it's the Colorado Avalanche. So I expect them to still be active at the deadline as well, wherever they see fit to maybe, get a piece here and there. They've already traded for two goalies this year,
Crazy.
not to mention this massive blockbuster. So a lot more moves to come, not only from the top teams, but I think a lot of the mid-tier teams are going to decide whether they want to sell or buy. So it's going to be very interesting to see.
Yep. Well, I'm a because this is not on the